We heard a lot today from Donald Trump, said that FEMA was responsible for the suffering of people in North Carolina, and he essentially blamed that on Joe Biden, suggesting that the Biden administration abandoned the people of your state. Is that true?
No, that's ridiculous. I can tell you, because I was involved in almost weekly calls with FEMA from shortly after Hurricane Helene, that FEMA was working full strength, coordinating with the state agencies, state emergency responders, the Army Corps of Engineers, which you just mentioned, or which I guess he mentioned, had been in Western North Carolina. And in fact, I know that the Army Corps of Engineers actually built a well for one of the hospitals so that they could have the water they needed to take care of patients while the water and sewer systems had been knocked out by the storm. So FEMA was working extensively at full force. We know that FEMA has actually provided more than $316 million in cash grants to individuals. FEMA has 11 disaster relief centers opened in North Carolina, and they have served more than 60,000 individuals. Now, in a disaster like this, and this was an unprecedented disaster, people need all the help they can get. Western North Carolina had never experienced anything like this previously. So I am delighted that President Trump has decided to focus on North Carolina because North Carolina needs as much help as it can get. But slamming FEMA is inappropriate because FEMA has been working and coordinating with our local agencies and in fact, the Army Corps of Engineers and military who have been loaned to Western North Carolina.
Well, it's not just, Congresswoman, that he's speaking unfavorably, shall we say, about FEMA. He's suggesting he wants it dismantled entirely and that it should be left up to the states for emergency response. Would a state like North Carolina have the resources or manpower to respond to a situation like this on its own in the future?
I don't believe so. I don't believe the American people at this time where we are having increasing disasters. I don't think the American people elected Donald Trump to make it more difficult for individuals and states to get the relief they need during disasters. I think people need as much help as they can get during these disasters. I thought it was interesting. He didn't have a plan of what he would do instead of FEMA. He didn't have a plan for how to help states that weren't able to handle the disasters. He's just interested in cost cutting, and I don't think that's what people are focused on right now.
Well, tell us what is needed, Congresswoman. We saw Donald Trump today with some affected families who clearly have been through hell, standing in front of an RV in a house that has been so badly damaged they can't live there any longer. What does North Carolina need now?
There were thousands of people who had to leave their homes, and FEMA and the local agencies were able to put people in temporary housing, were able to put people up in hotels, were able to bring in mobile homes to help people. But the devastation, as you can see on the pictures that you're showing, the devastation was just extraordinary beyond what anybody could expect. I know that there have been I think 3 million cubic yards of debris that have been cleared and removed, but there's so much more. I went to Asheville area several months ago to see what had happened to that wonderful city, and whole areas had been destroyed. They had a new arts district that had just been finished, an incredible renovation that was totally destroyed. There's a wonderful area of Asheville, Biltmore Village, where all the stores and restaurants had been destroyed, and this was right at their peak tourist season. So there is much more aid needed, not just to get people back in their homes, kids back in schools, businesses open so that they can start the recovery and people can start running their businesses again. There's much that's needed. Getting rid of FEMA is not the way to do it. If we need to improve FEMA, great. Pull together a task force of prior successful FEMA administrators. Let them take a look at what has been going on and see if there are ways to improve FEMA and get relief out faster. But destroying it, disbanding it, doesn't seem to be the right way to go.
We also have questions, Congresswoman, about what's going to happen with aid in California, as there has been suggestion by the president, by the Speaker of the House, that any emergency aid should be conditioned. Do you believe any of your former colleagues in the Democratic caucus would vote for any conditions on emergency aid for any state?
I can't imagine that. And in fact, I saw a quote from one of my close friends on the other side of the aisle, Representative Young Kim, who is a Republican, and said she thought it was wrong to condition aid because her constituents need relief. The fires have been absolutely devastating. The most important thing is not to make any of this provision of relief political, not to use it for political purposes. And in fact, right after Hurricane Helene, there was so much misinformation spread by then candidate Trump that FEMA actually had to put a myths and facts section up on their website so that people didn't believe the myths that were being spread and were willing to go get the help they needed.
Yeah, we read a lot of those on the air at the time. You know, it's interesting. You've been there. I realize it's not your charge now, but as a member of Congress, surely you were faced with moments like this. The idea as well is coupling disaster aid with raising the debt ceiling. How does a Democrat vote against that?
Vote against raising the debt ceiling? I think that
coupled with emergency aid, yes, conditioning aid, the way Kayleigh was talking about. It might not just be voter ID in California. If it's attached to a bill to hike the debt ceiling, lawmakers have their backs against the wall here, no?
I see what you're saying. Using it as a weapon. Look, this administration talks about weaponizing government, talks about the prior administration, but actually, I think what we're seeing is Donald Trump is using every effort to weaponize this government for his own political purposes. He is trying to put Democrats in a tough decision. The Speaker of the House has already demonstrated his ability to throw out their votes that specifically put Democrats between a rock and a hard place. And we're going to see that happening more and more during this next term. And I just hope that the Speaker puts the people of this country ahead of his own political motivations.